Hello, everyone. You are listening to your Palm Beach Guide with the Palm Beach Chamber of Commerce. My name is Kiana Rivera, and I'm the Vice President of Membership and Program Development here at the Chamber. And today, our special guest is Jane Hanson. Hello, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Doing well, doing well. I can't complain. It's just been a good day so far. But everyone, real quick, I'm going to read a couple sentences from her bio, and then we will jump right into the interview. So real quick, Jane Hanson is an Emmy award-winning television journalist and coach and has spent over 30 years helping people communicate better. Not only does it enhance their presence and ensure they resonate with every type of audience, but in today's fast-paced world, it is imperative to be on one's game 24/7. Hanson focuses on three core elements: what you say, how you say it, and how your body language keeps it all in sync. Among her diverse array of media and presentation training clients, including top-tier leaders of corporations spanning the fields of finance, insurance, startups, technology, education, design, fashion, and media, scientists, publishers, and editors-in-chief of numerous national brands, such as magazines and websites, and key opinion leaders in the pharmaceutical industry, internet, entrepreneurs, chefs, and restaurateurs. I love that. She has also hosted programs on cable channels and private satellite broadcasts covering nearly every subject, from healthcare to food, the environment, science, pop culture, tech, finance, and religion. And she is a frequent speaker, MC, panel moderator, podcaster, and hosts numerous video programs on a variety of subjects. Well, holy cow, Jane, this is awesome.
Oh, wait, I thought you were just going to do a short couple of lines. That was enough already.
I know, but I wanted everyone to just hear, truthfully, what a background. Holy cow, that's awesome. And amazing. Well, I want to jump in just real quickly first, thank you for being here. Thank you for being on our podcast and just being a huge part of the Chamber. I just have loved getting to know you through the trustee program and everything else as a member, so thank you.
Oh, you're very welcome. And there's lots of wonderful people to have met there, and it's a way of getting yourself acquainted with the community,
right?
Which is what's super important.
Good. Well, real quick, tell me a little bit just about how you got to Palm Beach. What was your journey before you got to Palm Beach? Share a little bit about that.
Well, I grew up in rural Minnesota. Landlocked, except for all the lakes, because there are more than 10,000 lakes, and you have to be at least a mile across to be counted. But at any rate, I left that little tiny town and pretty quickly got a job in New York City working for the NBC networks.
Wow.
So it was...
was New York always your dream?
Of course it was, because as a journalist... New York is the number one market, the number one television market in the country.
Right.
So it was pretty darn exciting. I was very young. I was in my 20s, early 20s when I arrived. And of course, I worked out of the iconic 30 Rock building.
Wow.
So every single day you walked in there surrounded by just people and things and unbelievable journalists, the people that I worked with. You know, you walk in the door for the very first time and go, okay, why am I here? I can't begin to live up to their standards, but you learn, and it was really, really super fun.
And when you got to NBC, what was your first job there? What was it like?
I was a reporter.
Okay.
And it's funny because one of the first stories, they said, you have 2 weeks where you'll kind of follow somebody else and go out and have a great time.
Was it a full 2 weeks, or did you
no,
just
it was not even a day.
They're like, you can figure it out.
So, and back then, parts of the city weren't as safe as they are today. Mm-hmm. Ironically, New York City is one of the safest places you can be in today's world. But back then, they sent me, there was a breaking news story about a fire, and it was up in this part of Harlem that wasn't necessarily very safe back then. And so I'm so excited about what I'm doing, I start to wander off and interview people and find people I can talk to or having issues. And all of a sudden, I see the camera crew kind of frantically looking for me. We were doing a live remote, so they've set up the truck and all this stuff. And I hear one of them saying to somebody on the radio, "We lost the new girl."
No.
So they didn't know where I was. And they're like, "She has no idea what she's doing." But fortunately, it was all fine.
Oh, good.
But I guess I had many wonderful aspects of that job and got to travel the world for NBC. But for a while, I had a show of my own.
Oh, tell me about it.
It was called Jane's New York, a little what's the correct word? aggrandizing because I'm like, what kind of a name is that? Can't we just call it something? But anyway.
No, that's great. Well, was it on, were you like the first influencer almost or something like that? How did that work?
In a certain respect, you could call it that because it was after 9/11, and one of my goals was to really help bring people back to New York and show its treasure trove of unbelievable culture and everything else it had to offer. And so the show was designed to have one subject.
Okay.
So we did underground New York and above the ground New York and in the sky and along the river waterfronts. But we did some really amazing things. Like I did a partnership with the Museum of Natural History.
Oh, wow.
And we went on a paleontology, whatever. The dinosaur dig, basically. Yes. We went to the Gobi Desert of Mongolia, which was really fun.
No way.
Yeah. So I'm up in an old Soviet military aircraft, and I'm with my camera crew and then these two paleontologists that are like the rock stars of that world that work at the museum.
Yes.
And we've got a fuel tank on board with us because we're going 750 miles into the Gobi Desert, so you have to take fuel with you. And the pilots are smoking, and I'm thinking, what the heck am I doing?
Oh my goodness, pilots are smoking.
Yeah, you're like, this is a time bomb waiting to go off. But
this was still in your 20s or 30s?
No. This was much more recently.
After you were seasoned. Awesome.
Yeah. That's after I was seasoned. So anyway, we had it was wonderful because we found some remains of 4 teenage dinosaurs, and it looked like they'd been killed in a catastrophic event, which lends service to what happened to those reptiles then. But at night, these scientists were brought in large semi-trailer trucks with freezers in them that held kinds of unbelievable food. We had wine, we had their guitars, and we'd be singing.
Like in the desert.
It was just
magical.
Super cool.
That's incredible. And so for each segment, I guess that was one in the desert. And then what about the river walk you said or something like that?
Well, we went underground.
Oh, underground. Okay.
And underneath the city of New York, there are many different layers.
Oh my goodness.
And the layers.
Well, I've been to New York like twice. Okay, right? So tell me more about this underground world that's in New York.
It's really crazy. So underneath Grand Central Station, which is where the Metro North and Amtrak, et cetera, and all those. I don't know if Amtrak goes in there. I can't remember. Anyway, so it's a huge transportation hub, but there's the layer of where you first come in, and then there's where all the trains come. But there's a third layer underneath it that nobody knew existed. We're underneath in that third layer. We go with the head of Con Ed, who's the major utility, to look at all of their wiring and all the things they're doing underneath there.
Right, and you're like, well, what is this used for?
Exactly.
Why is this here?
Why is this here? And then we went what was then called Water Tunnel Number 3. So they were building a new water tunnel that was about as high as the Chrysler Building is above ground. That's how far underground it is.
Oh my goodness!
Took us 4 minutes in a construction elevator to get down there, and that's
that would make me so nervous.
Well, I was, and I was down there with the mayor once because we took him down with us, and there's police officers with him that are carrying these rope ladders.
Yes.
I go, what are those for? And they go, well, if the elevator doesn't work, we're taking the rope up. I'm going, okay then.
Oh my goodness. What a time though. Could you imagine? Oh, I mean, you were there, but I couldn't imagine just seeing them and being like, okay, we're going down. Like, let's see what happens. Mm-hmm. But what was it like when you got down there? Did you get a tour and you were able to like walk down, or was it just elevator open and then time to go up?
Oh, no. There's people working down there like crazy because they're drilling through limestone that has never been touched by human hands because it's so far underground. And so they're drilling through this to create this new water tunnel, because the water tunnels that had provided water for the city of New York were quite old and very difficult to clean them and that sort of thing. And so, and the uses were so much greater, they needed to have more of an ability to get water through.
That makes sense.
But it was a little scary.
What a time.
Yep. And there's all these guys working away down there. They call them sandhogs. That's the name, their nickname for this group of unbelievable workers.
Right.
But it was fun.
It was fun. And then how long were you in New York for?
I moved to Palm Beach during COVID.
Okay.
I was one of those people that
That's
when
okay.
the hospital tents
Welcome.
went up, thank you. When the hospital tents went up in Central Park,
Right.
it was
What was that experience like, just being there?
It was, well, first of all, it was
Right.
zero center, whatever you call it, and because it was where the first cases were, where they
Right.
first began treating them. And even as I think about it now, it's a little chilling.
Right.
A lot of people died.
Right.
There were a lot of people in the hospital. There were a lot of people that didn't know what to do, and it was the first place to really totally shut down.
Right.
And as a result, we were pretty much under the gun to make sure that we followed every single procedure.
Right.
And so I think it was March 13th of 2020 was the day that really the city shut down. And that's when you knew that
It was real.
it was real, and it was frightening, and there wasn't much you could do about it. And so I had come to Palm Beach as a visitor so many times because I have dear, dear, dear friends that
Right.
live here. Many more now.
Right. Good. Good. Yes.
And so so during that time, I came down here with a girlfriend of mine, and she's actually, I collaborate with her and work a lot, and we rented a house just to see what it was like,
Right.
and had a wonderful time.
And you're like, this is paradise. I'm staying.
It is, especially in December, January, February, March, April, etc., when it's so cold elsewhere.
Right.
So it was absolutely just such a wonderful respite, and I fell in love with it, and that's when I decided that that's when I was going to move here.
And make this your full-time spot. That's good to hear. And then when you talk about, I love when you were talking about in your bio these 3 core elements: what you say, how you say it, and how your body language keeps it all in sync. Let's talk about, like, you are a master communicator. Let's talk about the business and like how you've really made a presence not only in your experience in New York but now in Palm Beach.
Well, the wonderful thing about this business is that you can do it
Anywhere, right?
anywhere. And I have clients all over the world.
Okay.
I do, many virtually, which means I'm looking out at my beautiful view
That's good.
here in Palm Beach and going, yes, let's go through that. Let's talk about your presentation you're
Right.
about to make, etc. So the communication business, and I think nothing displays it more than when we think about how we talk to one another. Communication is everything.
Right.
And it's not just about the words we use, it's what our body does.
Right.
And it's innate. We have been walking on Earth for however 2 million years, however 14 million, however many the truth is. But we've only had a spoken language for 160,000 years.
Wow.
Before then, we communicated through our body. A little experiment that people should try,
Yeah,
which is
let's
kind
hear
of
it.
fun. Either turn on your television or sit on a bench or go to the beach, whatever, and watch people.
Okay.
You will make up a story in your head about them without ever knowing anything.
Right.
Or if you watch television, you'll know what's going on without hearing it.
Well, I love a lot of my friends play this when we go to a bar or we go hang out, and we always will say, like, do you think they're on a first date, or is this a Tinder? is this a Tinder date, or is this like you're already in a relationship, or what are they arguing about? Like, let's like see what they're arguing about. So we play this game, I think, naturally too, because especially like I bartend part time. It's always like our people in the bar industry are always like, oh, they're new. You can tell they're like trying to be like, oh, what do you do? And like you always have those, you always like view based on their body, or if the girl's looking away, or she's like, okay, like let me check my phone, or whatever it is.
Right.
So I love that you say that, because I think we all do that by accident sometimes. And then it's really fun though when you intentionally say, okay, what do you think they're saying, at dinner or something. So I love that.
I'll bet most of the time you're pretty spot on.
Well, we try. I feel like we've gotten a lot of practice now.
Yeah.
And then I usually break the ice, and I'm like, oh my gosh, have you been here before? And then, of course, they'll be like, no, we're on a date. I was like, oh, congrats, have fun. And then I'll leave. And then I'll run back to the bartender and be like, we were right.
Give me that 10 you owe me.
I know. Hand it over. So that's funny you say that.
But it's really true. And so when you think about body language, because I spend a lot of time on this, sometimes people aren't aware of what they do.
Right. Did you study? Did you study it? Is this something and just like a passion that you found, and you were like, I'm going to dig deep into this?
I think it's part of my journalistic background.
Okay.
Because you can immediately, as a journalist, you're trained to be a very keen observer.
Right.
And you pick up on things that other people may not notice. And I think it comes directly from that.
Right.
So I can tell people they may be giving the greatest presentation of a lifetime. The words, the script is beautiful. But if they're going to deliver it like this and say, ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you about my great discovery, you're going to go,
Right.
oh.
I know.
So it's really thinking about how am I delivering something. There's a study that says that 93% of the way we resonate and are perceived by people is not what we're saying, but how we're delivering it.
Oh, wow. That's incredible.
So it's important stuff.
Well, and I think, too, to your point, whether it's a presentation for your job or you're just communicating with friends, I feel like you have to feel that passion of whatever you're talking about. Otherwise, it's time to move on. Like, It's time to just find something you're interested in. So you have some sort of excitement and passion behind it. So what are some just key takeaways that you tell your clients that's like, okay, this is how you present in the business world, and then this is how you better communicate with your friends or family, because sometimes communicating with friends or family is mostly family, not so much friends, but family you're stuck with. So it's like you got to figure out, hey, how do I better communicate with my family to make all of our lives better?
True, that's true. But actually, it's all the same.
All the same, okay.
Because everything is just a conversation.
Okay.
I think one of the things in business sometimes we don't realize is that if we turn it into a conversation, it's much better. The results are much better.
Right.
If we try to suddenly become somebody else and we're not being our authentic human being, then it doesn't work as well. So I would say, think about every encounter as just a conversation.
Okay.
The second key thing is listening.
Okay.
We don't listen very well. And when you really listen to someone versus, it's like when you're doing this podcast, you have to really listen.
Yeah. Well, that way too, because you can pick up, I think what makes this podcast so interesting for me is we get a designated amount of time that's blocked off that I can have full attention. And like my notes and stuff are here, but it's the notes about the guest, you know? So it's like, just in case something were to happen, I could look back to the notes and be like, okay, this is where we were. But most of the time, I just try to listen like you're saying, and then I'll say, oh, I can relate to that here. Or this is how I would view that here.
Right.
And then bounce off of that. So I try to also keep it pretty organic, and then just in case have the notes like as a backup. But most of the time, like you said, listening and then being able to take what a person is saying, you hearing it, and then really being able to then verbalize almost what they're saying or communicating, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay. So the listening part is key because it helps foster understanding.
Right.
Because if I really listen to you, instead of thinking, oh, how am I going to answer that? If I really listen, then you feel valuable, and I feel like I'm really, developing a relationship.
Right.
And relationships are what the world goes round about.
I think it was interesting what you just said. So I was scrolling through social media, and I came upon this clip of Steve Jobs when he was a professor, and a student asked him a question. And I think he waited. The whole point was how long he paused before he answered the question. I think he waited like a full 40 seconds.
Wow.
It was a long time where you're just like, are you ignoring me? Like, if I was a student, I'd be like, do you want me to repeat my question?
Or did I ask something really stupid?
I know, and I was just like, should I just leave the class now because I feel like an idiot, or like whatever it is. But he kept, the camera was on him so directly that you could really see him thinking about this question, to the point that when he formulated his answer, it was right on the money. He was just like so clear, so concise, and then it was like, okay, on to the next question. So when you talk about listening and then being able to pause and say, or even ask clarifying questions, like, did I hear your question correctly? Or what I hear you saying is, are those helpful tools as well that you tell your clients that, like, if they're having a hard time communicating with a client or even a boss or a colleague, it's like, okay, let me repeat what I think I thought I heard. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
a really super, super, super great idea.
Okay.
Because sometimes you might hear the question wrong, and you want to have absolute clarity.
Right.
Also, if it's a question you really don't want to answer,
I know, then you're like, okay, let me think about it.
you're buying yourself some time. But you use the word pause. That's the most underutilized tool we have.
Okay.
When you pause, when you're speaking, people, all of a sudden they pay attention. So it's a great way of drawing emphasis to something that you really want people to hear.
Right.
Pausing also, like you said with Steve Jobs, it's
Right.
really, once he started to answer, all of a sudden you realize that what he was doing was truly thinking about an answer, an appropriate answer. So
Right.
that's respectful.
Right.
Super respectful and super valuable. So it can really, and sometimes it's the difference between being regarded as like a keynote
Right.
or key opinion leader
Exactly.
or just anybody else.
Right.
So pausing is a super, super great idea.
Well, learn to pause. I like that. Let's take that as a tagline for today's
Learn to
talk. Learn
pause.
to pause. Learn to pause and just take a minute. So I want to transition a little bit to what you mentioned. Well, first of all, you have 9 Emmy Awards.
I do.
Let's talk about that. How did that happen? Like, you just don't wake up and you're like, I have an Emmy today.
Emmys are really judged by your peers,
Okay.
which I think makes them even more valuable. And I can't even tell you exactly. I know one of the Emmys is for my own show called Jane's New York. Another one of the Emmys is for a bridge that collapsed, the Mianus River Bridge in Connecticut many years ago, literally collapsed in the middle of the night. And there were, fortunately for that timing, the bridge wasn't, it was I-95
okay.
actually, which
Right.
goes right through here. I took it today.
Oh, my.
And so the bridge collapsed, and there were a couple of people killed, but they literally just went straight down.
Wow.
And so I was called, overnight to go out
Right.
and
You
cover
covering
this
the
thing.
story.
I did another one of the Emmys is for a series that I did on breast cancer,
Okay.
and this was unfortunately quite a while ago, so it was early on in the process, and there weren't a lot of survivors then, and so we were really trying to draw attention to it.
Right.
But I can't even remember all the rest.
Well, no, but I think kind of walk me through you said that it was judged by your peers, and just the fact that your colleagues and peers saw your work and was just saying, this is what is your process when you're in the thick of the story? Are you just so focused on storytelling?
Yes.
And okay, so focused on storytelling. What does that process look like?
Well, depending upon the story, if it's breaking news,
Okay.
that's when you have to really be on your toes because it changes second by second. The story evolves as time goes on. My prime example of that is the morning of 9/11. And I was the first person on the air at NBC.
You were.
I was. And basically, I was sitting in the studio waiting to do a little update, and just a regular news update, when my producer said to me in my earpiece, we think it's a small plane, it's just crashed into the World Trade Center, and you need to start talking. And I had no information, and all we had was video. We had a camera that was on the top of the Empire State Building that you could see it from that camera.
Oh my gosh.
And then we started to try to find people who could identify what had happened.
Right.
And the first person that comes on the air, I'll never forget it, is a janitor whose name was Anthony, and he worked on the west side, West 12th Street in Manhattan, which isn't that far from the buildings. And this is when we realize it's terrorism, because he says, it was a giant plane, it was silver and blue, and I swear it gunned its engines as it went into the building, which is exactly true. But at that moment in time, 2 minutes into this broadcast, you're going, uh-oh. He said, and you have to pray for them because they're all dead. And I go, oh no, we can't say that. I said, so I had to backtrack with him to say, let's just talk about exactly what you saw, because we don't know any of that right now. We just have to stick to the facts. But what he said was actually true.
Wow.
I mean, it's so eerie.
I have goosebumps right now.
I know.
Well, and I couldn't imagine, being in your position, you are now the face of calm in a very chaotic situation, but you're also having your own emotions because we've never experienced that before. I mean, I was so young. I can remember like the reaction my parents had, but we were in Florida when this happened. And like my uncle's wife worked in the towers. So I just remember my parents frantically phone calling people as it's on the news. You see the plane hit, and it's just like such a childhood memory. Like I remember sitting on my carpet and I was playing with blocks, but I recognized all of these outside things, realizing something was terribly wrong. So I couldn't imagine being in your position, having to process your own emotion to then have to communicate and not cause hysteria.
Right.
Especially when the janitor's saying
they're all dead.
They're all dead. And you're just like, okay, let's bring it back a minute. Just like you said, tell me exactly what you saw.
And there's no other information at that point.
Right.
And we have heard from nobody, fire officials, the police department, because they're all busy trying to figure out what's going on. And as we know, a lot of them died that day. So it was chaos, yes. Keeping calm took every fiber of my being to do that.
Right.
But that was my job.
Right, that was your job.
My job was to help people, because everybody left their offices. They all went home. My daughter was little. She was in school.
Wow.
And I'm trying to make sure that she's all right. But
you're right.
I'm in the middle of it all. And so it was probably one of the hardest days of work
your career
ever.
Right.
But it was also one of those days when I knew that the words that I uttered and the way that I held myself was going to be crucially important to helping people get through it.
Wow.
And it wasn't just that day that was awful, but all the ones following it. As we
really understood and watch it unfold from there. Not even just the first initial, but like you said, the days to follow. Wow.
Yeah, it was something.
Well, and so what were some key takeaways that you took from that experience that then you used in future projects that are unaffiliated with, that story?
I would say learning how to keep your cool is one. Really thinking through how important it is that we understand what our roles are. In any moment in time. I think that's a good takeaway. And also how important it was for me to help the city in the recovery process, which is why, I said earlier, that's why I wanted to start this show of my own, was about helping revitalize a city that at that moment in time desperately needed it.
Right.
So I think what happens when you go through something that traumatic, just as anybody who goes through something that really affects them, car crash, fire, whatever it is, when something like that happens, you have to really dig deep to find resolve and to find a way to carry on that makes sense. But it also, I think, grounds you in what really matters in life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you said that. Grounds you in what matters in life. Because you're right. In those situations, it all comes out. It's like when the squeeze is on, whatever's inside is going to come out. And you have to be ready for that. You really do.
Yeah.
I don't think you could ever be fully ready until you're in it.
Right.
And then you're like, here's what I would do differently the next round.
And that's when you learn a lot about yourself.
Right.
Is who am I really and how
do I communicate it so I'm not just like a walking tornado to everybody around me? I think that's spot on. Wow.
So very true.
So very true. So sorry. Well, Jane, in closing, wow, I'm like overcome with emotion right now. Just in closing, tell people how they can get a hold of you, just for your work and how people can grab coffee or lunch or just get to know you. How can they get a hold of you?
I have a website, which is my name, Jane Hanson, HANSON.com. And I'm on social media. I have an Instagram thing that says @Jane Hanson Official.
Easy peasy.
Easy. And I'm on LinkedIn just under my name, so I'm all over the place.
Awesome. Well, and also you attend all of our events, so please find Jane, at all of our events, and Jane, thank you just for a riveting conversation today. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Yes.
And Palm Beach, I love you.